Army National Guard was officially created on December 13, 1636, predating the founding of the nation and a standing military by almost a century and a half, and is therefore the oldest component of the United States Armed Forces. America's first permanent militia regiments, among the oldest continuing units in history, were organized by the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1636. Since that time, the Guard has participated in every U.S. conflict from the Pequot War of 1637 to our current deployments in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Today's National Guard is the direct descendant of the militias of the 13 original English colonies. The first English settlers brought many cultural influences and English military ideas with them. For most of its history, England had no full-time professional army. The English had relied on a militia of citizen soldiers who had the obligation to assist in national defense.
I've been on 2 deployments.
I have deployed 2 times in my career thus far.
I deployed with Alpha Battery, 1st Battalion, 121 Field Artillery.
I've deployed once with Bravo Battery 121 FA on a HIMARS mission to Afghanistan between 2012 and 2013.
So for the pre-mob, any complications with work, family?
So work, that was tough for them. I'd only been working there actually in the office for a total of like 6 months with the BOLC days in between. Back then, BOLC was 6 months for FA because you do an AOT course. So I was only at work for like 2 months, not even that, and then I was back for July to October, and then I was going to leave again, so they had another year. It wasn't a big place. It was a big company, so I was already planning to look for new employment. So I started applying. I applied at Kohler Company, and I told them in the interview that I was going to be deploying, and they took me anyway.
The first deployment was when I was an active duty Army officer stationed at Fort Sill. It was a Paladin battalion, which is an artillery battalion tasked, organized as a gun truck company, so an MP style company that took armored vehicles, armored Humvees, and escorted convoys of third country national semis throughout northern Iraq, where I deployed as a battery commander to Baghdad, Iraq. A towed cannon artillery unit that was again tasked, organized to be a military police detention operations company, and we operated a prison system in Baghdad for a year. My second deployment, it was a long deployment. It was a detention operations, so we worked at a pretty large detention facility, and there was thousands of terrorists there. It was a rather large complex. And we were an all-National Guard unit, except for maybe a dozen or so inactive Ready Reserve or IRR soldiers that were attached to our unit. So the thing about the National Guard is, and I can't speak for the reserves, but I would reasonably assume it to be similar, is if you have E5s, staff sergeants, lieutenants, captains, majors, these folks that have put in 4 to 6, maybe 10 or 12 years in uniform, generally speaking, they're high-functioning individuals, and not only are they successful in their civilian lives, but they're successful in the National Guard. So if you become a staff sergeant or a sergeant first class or a first sergeant or a battery commander or a company commander, you have skills. And if you look at the direct comparison to their civilian life, they're probably pretty well set there. They're in a leadership position. A lot are teachers, master electricians, higher up like foremen in construction companies, all that sort of stuff. It certainly does help having them there, because now at every level of your organization you have a leader that's seasoned and wants to be We had a welder on the detention operations mission, and as you might imagine, there's a lot of metal gates, doors, and hinges inside of a prison that's really built to be, it's an all-weather type of deal. A lot of times these prisoners are outside, and it's a chain link fence and things of that nature with barbed wire. But anyway, this welder had come up with a better way to latch the doors so that when prisoners go in and out of these larger complexes, as they often did for various appointments and just transfers in general, the doors would sway in and out. In other words, they opened both ways. He came up with a very simple system that allowed it to only open one way, which increased the safety of the guards, so United States soldiers, tremendously. And once the general officer, the 2-star general in charge of that area, kind of caught wind of it, and he noticed that this new hinge was working so much better, this locking mechanism, he made this NCO, not made, but asked this NCO to do it to every single door in the prison. So you can imagine the resources that were involved. Welders, metal, assistants to help him, tools, like chopping tools and everything to cut the metal. So this guy was a welder, E7, highly successful in the civilian world, came there and welded up a prison in Baghdad and made the place safe and probably prevented injury.
They bring you home. It's a very well done process to make sure they integrate soldiers back into society. I was very impressed with it. So you come home, you're at Fort Bliss for about 2 weeks, and it's beautifully done because you're on Fort Bliss. It's like kind of like real life again. You're on an army base. You can go to the mall and eat in the food court, or go to a gym. So it's very well done in that regard. But at the same time, although you're in real world again, you're in the confines of a military base, so they can still control you, they can still keep an eye on you and make sure that you're okay. We had to speak to folks and make sure that we had no things that had come up during deployment that would need appropriate care. You go through your demobilization process where they kind of transition you from being an active duty guy back to the National Guard guy, and make sure your pay is squared away, your statement of service, your DD 214 is taken care of. It is a very well done and very well orchestrated process. And then what you do is you come home after 2 weeks at Bliss and you're released. You're back at your house, your apartment, whatever. And then I believe, so they have 1 or 2, I can't remember what they call yellow ribbon events, where they bring you to a hotel, they put you up for the night, you get to see all your buddies again. Most of it's the first time we've seen them since. And they're called reintegration events. So you go through those. They have all kinds of speakers to kind of inform you of what benefits you have available to you as a veteran now. If you need health care, here's what you need to do. So it's very well taken care of. And those are kind of reintegration events. Civilians will sometimes say, and I've heard other soldiers and folks say this as well, they can sometimes drive you crazy. Things like, oh, I had the worst day. I had to wait in traffic for an extra 20 minutes today. And to be frank, your empathy goes out the window. I mean, after going somewhere where, you see medevac choppers coming in and landing in Bagram, you know that there's soldiers hurt on these helicopters and things like that. Somebody to say, oh, I had a bad day today, I had to sit in traffic for a little bit longer. You roll your eyes and you just laugh. You're like, I get it, in the scheme of your world, that's bad, but there are people right now having far worse days.
Since 9/11, the Guardsmen that have deployed multiple times. You got to consider a timeline that starts with a deployment. You come home, and then perhaps you have 2 years until you deploy again, and then you're gone another year. So there's some obvious things, you're away from your family and all those things. Well, that happens to the active duty guy as well. Where I think the real difference is you get that 2-year window between deployments. No one's paying your bills. The Army's not paying your bills, no one's paying for your health care, the Army's not paying for your health care. You have to restart all that up in your civilian world. So, you get back, you get a period of time where you do have coverage, You have some leave, perhaps you reestablish yourself, and then maybe 24 months later you're doing it all over again. That it's incredibly disruptive. We ask a tremendous amount of the Guardsmen that sustain this over and frankly it has been over a decade, since really 2003 is when the deployments really started, and here we are in 2017. We've got soldiers in this battalion that have deployed 4 times with families, and you consider 4 deployments over of a roughly let's just say a year's length over a period of time for about 14 years. Do the math. They've restarted and stopped their lives a number of times. And that's asking a lot, and I think in some respects, I think if I had one criticism on how we do this, how we've done these wars, it almost feels like a little bit of an outsourcing at times, where you bring in the Guard to fill gaps, and then you don't pay them for 2 years, and then you bring them in to fill the gaps again. I don't know on a policy standpoint if that's really right.